Well, hello there. We're on day 2 of water resources. Today we're going to cover surface water, and we are going to cover alteration of surface water. We've already talked about groundwater. We understand the issues that are involved with surface water. Take that back. Issues with groundwater and things that we do as humans that impact it. So we have to get some of the basics down on surface water. So surface water is anything that is, well, on the surface. I know that's kind of a secret, isn't it? Things that we should look for. So we know that surface water is going to be anything that would be like streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, wetlands. As you can see by the chart here, you can look at the different sizes of the of surface water and the volume in which it takes up and how much water is available to us through surface water. If we go all the way back to the chart in which we originally looked at, where we have the breakdown of different water, we know that surface water is a very small percentage. And the water that's really accessible to us is mostly groundwater. But we utilize surface water just as much as we do groundwater, just because it's what's available in some areas. So we got to look at a couple different terms that have to deal with surface water, and usually this refers to different types of lakes. When we have our different types of lakes, we are able to see that we have 3 different terms we need to know: algotrophic, mesotrophic, and eutrophic. We're going to come back and talk about eutrophication later on when we talk about water pollution, but we need to get those terms under wraps right now. Now, this is a oligotrophic lake. If you've been to the western part of the United States, you probably have seen something like this. Many high altitude lakes are oligotrophic. You're going to see that beautiful, clear, blue water, not a lot of plant life, and that has to do with the amount of nutrients that are available. So if we go back a second here to the slide, we have oligotrophic, low amounts of nutrients. So the nutrients is the key to what defines the different phases of a lake. Now, lakes, if left on its own accord, will go through the different phases. They start oligotrophic, then they go to mesotrophic, then they go to eutrophic. Now, as we look at oligotrophic, we're looking mostly at phosphorus and nitrogen. Now, if we think back, we can review that phosphorus and nitrogen are used for plants. They're used to build structures within the cells of plants, and that's what allows them to grow and develop. So if those things are not available, you can't have plants growing in that system. So oligotrophic is going to be, in most cases, going to be a very deep lake. Not a lot of plant life, very little life in general, because you need those producers available to support the rest of the ecosystem, our different trophic levels. As we move from producers up to primary consumers, secondary consumers, so on and so forth. So if you look at oligotrophic, you will see that on the right-hand side of the screen, we have very deep, it's cold water, there's not a lot of nutrients available. Now these high-altitude lakes are like that. A newly formed lake is going to be like this as well. So these high-altitude lakes don't have a lot of decay and decomposition because of the cold temperatures. This keeps it from becoming, in many cases, or transitioning to the next stage. Now, we go from oligotrophic, we go to mesotrophic. Obviously, meso meaning in the middle. It's sort of the middle of the road kind of area. So if we look at mesotrophic, you're going to have more sediment. It's not going to be quite as deep. If you take a look at the screen on the right-hand side here, you will see that the mesotrophic lake is going to be shallower. You're going to have some algae. You're going to have some plants that are growing. That is because the nitrogen and phosphorus content has actually increased over time. And that is because you have the vegetation that is around the lake is allowed to break down. It fills in. It allows there to be nutrients in the lake. And once you have those nutrients, you now have the ability to move into that mesotrophic level that allows for more plant growth. Once you have more plant growth, that means you are going to have more other life that is going to fill in that habitat as well, because now you have producers, now you can have primary consumers, so on and so forth. The last stage of the life of the lake is eutrophic. You can see that eutrophic is going to be a very shallow. You can see all the sediment over here on the right-hand side of the screen. A lot of sediment has filled in. All that sediment is that organic material and other erosion that is filled in and allowed for that shallow water level. Now, we know that one other aspect of having shallow water means you have the ability of sunlight to reach more areas of the bottom of the lake or the body of the water. This is something that's really important because you need that sunlight to allow for plant growth. As you can see in the picture, eutrophic is going to be much, it's kind of, think of it mostly like a marsh. And most lakes, if, like I said, left to their own accord, will go through this kind of transitional period. You go from oligotrophic to mesotrophic to eutrophic. Okay, so that's just lake. You need to know those terms. And again, every sequence as you go through, more nutrients are available, and you have shallower water, which also allows for the sunlight to penetrate deeper into, or penetrate to the bottom and allow more plant growth. So we just need to get those terms out of the way. Again, we're going to come back to eutrophic when we talk about water pollution and humans' involvement with speeding up the rate at which these lakes and bodies of water go through these different stages. So, actually, I do not want you to answer that question yet. So, we're going to back up here. I want you to pause the video, and I want you to discuss with your group. I want you to think about the characteristics of Pewaukee Lake. Where would you say Pewaukee Lake falls in this range of lake types? So, pause the video, discuss, and then we will discuss as a large group momentarily. So, now, starting in the next section of water and surface water, I want you guys to answer this question as a group. So when does the water cycle recharge freshwater sources the most during the year in the United States? So think about timing of the year, when do we get most of our water, and then I want you to discuss really quickly what are some problems with this. So pause the video right now and answer that with your group as well. So, now that you've answered that, and we've discussed as a group, let's start talking about when water is most available in the United States and why that is important to understand how surface water recharges. So, our surface water. It is any precipitation that does not infiltrate into the ground, because once it infiltrates in the ground, it is groundwater. About 2/3 of it is lost by seasonal floods and is not available. So we already discussed a little bit last time. Think about where does that water actually go. We know that if it can't infiltrate into the ground and can't be stored, you think about water always flows. So as water fills into these other bodies of water, and we know that we've just discussed that water is going to be more available during spring, and we can't capture all that water. So where does that water go? Well, it goes into into any body of water, and then it keeps on flowing out to the ocean. So 2/3 of this water is actually lost every year to seasonal floods, and that water actually ends up in the ocean, is not usable by us, because once it gets to the ocean, it is now part of that saltwater body and is hard for us to access. The 1/3 that is available to us is going to be the important part. So we use that for the hydroelectric dams. We store that in our reservoirs. It's in our lakes. It's in our streams. It's in ponds. It's in marshes. All that is potentially available to us. Now, this stuff gets stored. It's usually the tail end of those seasonal floods that actually fills our reservoirs and that kind of in that aspect. And that actually is usable, and that's what we mean by reliable runoff. So reliable runoff is the amount of water, and that's that 1/3 that actually is a stable source of water that we are able to store and use. So the watershed is the area in which you have the water that drains to a specific body of water. So you have like the Mississippi drainage basin or the watershed. You have the Lake Michigan drainage or watershed. So all of those areas, so it's a region where those waters drains into a stream, lake, reservoir, and ends up in that body of water. That is a watershed. So we have to connect this as we go forward. We have to connect it to how that water moves, where it gets stored, and potentially if you have a pollution issue, how that can actually move from one area to another. So, stop this video. We're going to have a quick large group wrap up of this, and then we are going to start on the next video, which is altering surface water.